back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, what's going on?
And we're talking about the essentials of a great tradesperson. Tradesperson, not tradesmen, men and women. All right. So the essentials of a great tradesperson.
And this is something I'm really genuinely passionate about because it can expand. It can be anything, but especially in the trades, it's the blue collar world is so still down to earth, grounded, actual work that gets done, and that's not downplaying anybody that's working on computers or anything else, but it's physical. You're physically working.
Yeah. The physical nature of the work.
Physical nature of the work is so similar to, it's what has been in existence for all of time. And what really is moving to me about it is that so much of it is completely within your control. The best tradespeople, the greatest, most skilled people, what they have is effort, effort over time. And the two of those things equal the development of a skill that nobody else has.
Yeah.
So that's it. When I really try and make it simple, when you take what I think would be our strongest operator, the person, if you thought I need this thing done, who are you sending? They aren't the fastest. They aren't the biggest, the strongest. They're the ones who have been doing it diligently with the most effort. And I'm not even saying the longest time, because we have some younger operators who are really solid because they take to their craft, they own it, and they want to be great at it. And they realize the value of it and they work hard at it.
So I think that and it's funny because we were talking about this before we even hit record, right? And this is one I think where each one of us could have a similar but varying tangent of the opinion. And for me, when I was thinking about this topic a little bit as we were hitting record here, I'm like, we're not talking about what makes the best tradesperson, right? Not necessarily if you could only pick one guy to do a job, what's the best, I think we're talking about the essentials that make a great tradesperson. And part of that for me is definitely the effort, right? But part of it for me is the skill. Now I think that the caveat in that conversation is the skill for the position, the skill for the level that's at. So it doesn't suggest that you can only be a good tradesperson if you've acquired 20 years worth of skill development, right? I think that for me, the skills are sort of the leader. And it's going to vary significantly based on the position and the experience. So, for example, we don't necessarily expect an entry level laborer to have a lot of knowledge or experience. That they wouldn't be entry level if they had a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. But there are skills, or maybe even traits. Well, what's the guy, the SEAL that you like to listen to?
Davini.
Yes. Yeah. Does he use?
No, he used traits.
Is it traits?
No, it's
what's he? Attributes.
Yeah. Brian, that's a great point.
So
and I'm going to jump right in on it. That's a great point. It's attributes. There are attributes of these roles, of these blue collar roles, whether it's a plumber, electrician, a laborer, a metal worker, a heavy civil operator,
right?
A paving team, whatever. There's attributes of those, and the attribute that to me is always most key is diligence. It's that they're going to work hard.
Yeah, willing. I can do, right? I will do.
Right. Solve problems, right? I mean, that's, we start to get to our core values, and that's why
to me is number two. I was wanting to do it is first, and then secondly, some analytical, willing to do. All right, not just recognizing that there's a problem, but let's think through this. Let's solve the problem.
And a personal thing that just happened is I was out on a job, and I'm in the field a fair amount, but not in the field, right? I'm not actually working in the field. I'm trying to facilitate. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to be supportive. And Tom was out there on this job, and the guys had rented a laser that was not our laser, and it was a really nice laser, but more complex than a laser I would have been used to, And I looked at it, and it sort of reminded me of the day that Greg had me, or I think you had me, and then Greg made fun of me running the 6 on top of liner that day, where it was I knew that I didn't know how to do this thing. But ultimately, I knew that Tom might not know Tom knew exactly how to do it with what he wanted to use, but he didn't have that. And so what I didn't know, in this crazy sense, what I didn't know was how to program this laser. I didn't know. I'd never seen that laser before. I never saw the screen. I don't know. I know what we wanted to do. I understand, even with just a stick, I could have done it and helped Tom. But I was like, we have this laser. We have to be able to do this. And I called Andrew and I was like, hey, you rented this laser. Can you explain to me real quick how I set it up? I was like, I think I know, but just explain it to me and where the buttons are. And in 2 minutes, he explained it to me and we did it. And then I showed it to Tom so Tom could do it right. And it was the willingness of Tom and I to say like, hey, we don't know how to do this. Now, right. Tom knew exactly how to do it. Tom could have done it with no laser. Sure. Like Tom could have done it with nothing by eye and it would have been fine. But the point is we had the tool and Tom started to go that direction. He was like, it's okay. We're just going to put it in. We can do it. And I'm like, okay, but we have the laser. Like, let's try to use it, and that's where, like, for me, that's one of my qualities is that I'm willing to be humble enough to say, I'm going to solve the problem, but I don't necessarily know how to solve it myself. Yeah. So I'm going to get somebody to help me. And I think that's a big step too.
And that's sort of like the attribute thing for me, as opposed to like, you didn't necessarily have the skill, but you had the attribute to seek out the knowledge to solve the problem. Yeah.
Well, another thing is, it's 80% effort, 20% skill on certain things. But, as you're saying about that labor, so that laborer might be on a very complex job. If they're paying attention to their surroundings, they might not have been the foreman on the job. They might not have been the operator on the job, but they now have experience on that type of work. So the other week I was out in the field and we were doing this funky job. And I was thinking about it afterwards. The guys that were out there, right? Now that they've done this job, if another job like this comes up, they have this in their bank of memories of like, hey, we know how to do it. We might even do it better the second time because we learned through some challenges. But the key was right? They went to the job and they're like, we're going to figure it out as we go. And we did some goofy things in there. We were trying to reset boxes and all this kind of stuff. But it was one of those where like experience adds to that factor. You can be the best operator, but if you don't have experience to balance it out. So that's why I think it's so important that you might just be a laborer, but if you're watching what's going on around you as you're doing something, you might be told to clean out the corner of a trench. But while you're not doing that, if you're looking around and gaining an understanding of what's going on around you, not just your scope, you all of a sudden, you're building that experience so much quicker that you might have the experience in a much shorter time frame because you're gaining from what's happening all the way around you. You're seeing the job from a different perspective. And that really is the key because, the effort, the willingness to try, and then time all come together. And sometimes those are shrunk. Sometimes those are long-term. It depends. If you're doing the exact same thing for 15 years, you might be very good at that. But in the construction industry, very infrequently are two things exactly the same.
Right. I was going to say what you're talking about a little bit to me is attention to detail, right? Like seeing the nuances in the things that could on the surface level appear to be the same, but understanding why they're different and being able to like pick up on the periphery. So like things that you're involved in and maybe didn't know before you got there, but are exposed to because now you're a part of the circumstance, the situation, the solution, whatever it might be. And being able to like sort of like a sponge, like capture those things, add them to your tool belt. Like you said, I think that's like a crucial piece of
we were on this job and the foreman and I spent, as we were doing it, we kept going back and forth with like ideas to keep getting better on it, right? Like we're like, oh, let's try this. And then we try a little bit like, oh, let's try this. We were like, because there was that much ambiguity in what we were doing, we were basically figuring it out as we went forward. Sinkholes are a great example of that. Snow's a great example of that. You just got to make a decision on the fly, get it done. When you're working with plans, you got to get it to those specs, but there's a lot of what we do that has fluidity into it. They raised the building a foot and, that changed the grades, or they moved the driveway, or, the PennDOT permit ADA doesn't work. Okay, our job is to find that solution, and trying things is the only way to get there because, once you go off script, we'll say, of the plans, really it's the solution is relying on the people in the field, because nobody's going to come up with that answer quicker than the people with the boots on the ground.
Well, and you know, when you talk about that, whether you're off the plans or you're trying to solve a problem, right? That at the end of the day, to solve a problem, you have to acknowledge a problem.
Sure.
Right. So one of the another like attribute that I think is really important is that you're able to admit that there's a problem. Sure. Right. So like, in other words, to look at it and say, sort of, not to say like this won't work, right? But to say, okay, we did this. We have to do something different, and not get tied up in the minutia of why we got there. Like, well, how did it get here then? You know, how did this curb get in at this grade? Like, what difference does it make at this point? It will be somebody's job to figure out what happened that led to the mistake. But as a tradesperson in the field, your job is to get the work done. And to get the work done, you have to identify there's a problem, accept that the problem happened, and if it's your fault, it's your fault, and that's fine. And the number of times we've talked about it on the podcast and just in our daily work lives, to say we can solve almost any problem as a company that we run into if we just are willing to acknowledge there's a problem and take ownership of it and say, okay, how do we solve the problem? But if you walk into a problem that you don't know you have, that's really that you've put yourself at a disadvantage. So I think we're bouncing around and we're jumping quickly between the three of us in this one. But I mean, I think it's effort. It's willingness to solve problems. It's wanting to be part of a team. You know, it's all the attributes that make that person a really good tradesperson. But factored into it is certainly the skill, which comes with time.
Yeah.
And some ability. I mean, I cut you off there, but I apologize. But I do remember a story that Tom told me about Ford from when he had started really early on, and you probably had, your cat backhoe. It's probably what you had. And I think you were trying to dig a pool behind your own house or something. And Tom told me the story, and he said, and Ford starts digging, and he said, I'm watching him. And now keep in mind at this point, Tom is not an excavator, right? Like Tom was land clearing. So earthwork, but really land clearing. And Tom said, I watched him and I was like, this kid can really hold grade. Like he knows what he's doing. Like he's figured it out. And so what an interesting point that must have been, like as a parent, but also as a person with experience, like a skilled tradesperson, to look and say like, this kid has a natural ability to be able to do this thing. Now he probably had some seat time behind him at that point, but it speaks to that Ford had the willingness to try it, the work ethic to say, I'm going to get this done and I'm going to solve the problem even if I don't know exactly how to solve it. And then the ability to be able to do it. And you put those things together and you have a solid tradesperson in Ford, who I love throwing Ford in the field because he likes it, but also it's like the best version of us. You know what I mean? When I put it out there, like I strive for everybody to want to be like Ford in how they want to represent the company and operate. Cause I think that highly of him about it.
Yeah.
And I think that when I get him out there, sometimes that happens. Like you get to see him mesh with the guys and the guys get to see that. And it's like an infusion of the original thing that started Berg Construction.
To be honest, I was 15 and I just didn't want to stack firewood, so I'd rather dig a hole. I'd much rather would have dug a hole for the. I think the whole area was within an inch, just by eye.
Just by eye.
Yeah. Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a 931 little track loader.
That would have worked everywhere except for Longwood.
That tolerance was okay. Yeah. No, because actually my dad brought my step uncle or something over with a laser. Then afterwards, he was like, "Okay, we'll check it and see what the cuts." And it was like beep 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 the whole way around. I was like, "He's like, what'd you use?" And I was like, just kept digging and kept my track straight and we got it done. But like, that's certain things can be learned. And that's the cool part. This is almost like I'm tying the sport in like you guys usually did. There's a very famous guy with the number 23 on his jersey. And the story about him getting cut at his 9th grade team.
Oh yeah.
And then going and working. Like he didn't
quit.
He didn't quit, and he had to find his natural ability, or he had to refine it, we'll say. Yeah. So like he didn't have it immediately. He didn't just step on and all of a sudden like he's, since 6th grade been projected for whatever. Like he had to work on it, and that's kind of the same thing where
he didn't get lucky.
No.
Yeah.
He put the effort in there.
Well, and you know what I love about that too is we do love sports analogies, right? But if you're going to take Jordan, and then you take Kobe, who everybody knew he was going to be great from the time he was probably in 6th grade. And guess what? He still outworked you.
Right.
Like,
you didn't see it.
You just didn't see, because he didn't have to, neither of them really showed it to you. Mm-mm. They just went to work and they did it. And it's no coincidence that they're two of the best ever, because They worked the hardest.
Yeah.
The world is littered with people that were Kobe, and somewhere along the way they stopped putting in the work.
Yeah.
And you don't have their name anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know, like we don't talk about names, but you know who comes to mind of that person that it didn't work is Jamarcus Russell. I mean, like that kid, like I don't know if Jamarcus Russell was LSU's quarterback, won the national championship. He was one of the most phenomenal, I mean, like just physically gifted, everything else, and it didn't work. And you know, it's almost like I don't know him personally, but in the story when I read it, it's almost like he was so gifted that he didn't need to work hard until all of a sudden he made it to the NFL and needed to work hard, and then he didn't know how to work hard. Like that's sort of the story that I always read was that he didn't know how to work hard because he had never had to work hard. You know, so it's not, skill is important, but you can learn how to do things. But your attributes, you know, that's why I like that divinity thing. Your attributes are what's going to drive you to reach goals.
Yeah.
Well, your soft skills.
A lot of what you were describing before we got off on tangent to me sounded like communication, right? So you were talking about the acknowledgement of the problems. And I was thinking like somewhere in there isn't just the acknowledgement of the problems, but like also like being able to communicate the plan when there isn't a problem, right? So you got to be able to like sort of align.
Well, and communication is actually a huge thing too. When you say like, think about, you know, when you're on a site and you're watching the guys, you know, somebody operate and somebody work in a trench. Yeah. And the hand signals, the nonverbal communication that they're doing, you know, and so it's just as important. So there's that's another important one. You're right. Is being able to communicate, to be part of the team. Because if you can't communicate, it gets really hard to do this work.
Yeah. The other one I was thinking about, and this probably comes with experience too, to some extent, but time management, like understanding how to work under and through time constraints, because like all of the things that we're talking about are important, but there isn't like an unlimited amount of time to get done tasks, skills, jobs.
Well, and you trigger me when you say certain things. And you know who comes to mind? We talk about him now again is Ed, right? Ed was a really skilled tradesperson. Yeah. But if Ed had one flaw, it's that he wanted everything to be perfect. So the time constraint became a problem. And so management for Ed, you know, with his foreman or superintendent really looked like that became a big piece of what their responsibility was to deliver to Ed that like, we have this amount of time to do this. We have to do this, you know, and we have to get it done.
And maybe beyond time, resource management, right? So like time and resource management, there isn't an infinite amount of money. There isn't an infinite amount of, you know, dirt. Like Ford likes to say, there isn't new dirt. We've got what we've got.
Right.
And so.
Well, that's something that, you know, using what you have, like I was telling Levi the other day, I said, like, when we started, we had one Traco, and that Traco did everything. Over its size, under its size, you know, stuff it shouldn't have done. But that was what we had. So we used it for everything, and got creative. You know, you had to dig something on a slant, you put some dirt here, and you lift your tracks up so you got to the angle you were supposed to be at, versus like, oh, now we have some cool features on some things that make it easier. But the reality is, if that's not on your job site that day and it's not coming, you got to figure out with what you got how you're going to get to the end result. Like you just, you know, and I think that's, you know, I was thinking about this too when you were talking earlier, like, you know, people talk about the stress of the trades. But most times you see people stressed, it's about the problem, right? Like they're upset about something happening. It happened. Let it roll. We got to figure out the solution. And, you know, it's not as stressful trying to come up with a solution as it is like.
Well, because you feel like if you can get to a solution,
right? You got it
that's
done.
your
you
way
fixed
out.
It. Right.
You know, you fixed it. And then it becomes a story you can tell. And that's, you know, and that's the fun part of the trades. You know, when the guys get to tell the story of this thing they did, you know, this crazy thing they encountered, and they don't tell
where
you
it went wrong and how they got out
right,
of it.
And how they got out. And that's the story. The story isn't that went wrong. The story is what they did to get out of it. You know, and that's that ability to just move on, almost like sports analogy again, but almost like, you know, like a closing pitcher. You know what I mean? That he's got to throw he may have lost the game yesterday, but he's got to throw the same pitches tomorrow. Right. He's got to come back and he's got to do it again. And you got to be able to forget and learn from what happened and try and make a better decision. But ultimately you're still going to do it with the same tools. Yeah. You know, a
lot of sports analogies. I feel like golf's like right there too. Like, you know, I'm not a good golfer, but I do know that 90% of golf is repetition, being able to do the same thing over and over again. And when you're doing it over and over again poorly, you're going to get poor results. And you do it over and over again, and you figure out where it's going wrong. It's going to go right.
Yep.
Like you said, you hit a bad shot. The next shot, you got to forget that just happened and think that you're going to get the next one right.
Yeah. That's maybe why, like, I don't know, maybe that's why like golf and construction are both popular. Like, like everyone's got a chance of it going right. So we're not all going to be pros, but every time
we're going to keep trying.
Every time you do it, you got a chance of it going right. So
you just be better tomorrow than you were yesterday.
Yeah, I like that. That was on your
that was on my video.
Your video the other day, or your post. Yeah. So that's probably a good place to wrap it up. I think that there are a lot of things that make a great tradesperson, but it's mostly the culmination of attributes continuing to develop and be done over and over again, which eventually results in the culmination of skills and knowledge and experience. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this, and we hope you come back for another episode.